Welcome to the Wayne Bennett Podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's Podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett, and this is episode 155. It's December the 3rd, 2024, a nice snowy day, and our guest today is a longtime radio announcer, director, owner of WJLS, and he's also the former mayor of Beckley. He's hosted hundreds of, probably thousands of events. Mr. Bill O'Brien, welcome.
Wayne, thanks. Good to be with you.
Let's start off. How do you pronounce your mother's maiden name?
Denegri.
Denegri.
Yeah.
Now, is that Italian?
Very Italian, yeah.
And
yeah, she was former city council person here, director of the Red Cross for 25 years. Her father was a chef at the Greenbrier for 40-some years. Yeah.
Now, so she grew up in what, Sulphur Springs?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it's a beautiful story about how she met your father. Can you share that with us a little bit?
They both worked at Montgomery Ward in New York. Some of her family, let's see, how can I cut to the chase here? The Greenbrier Hotel was only open during the nice weather. In other words, they shut down in the winter. So my grandfather had to work at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City in the winters. So my mother wound up there, and a lot of the family lived in New York City. My father moved to New York City with his family from Vermont. And they both eventually wound up working at Montgomery Ward on Long Island. And they met there and fell in love and got married. Now, and then were transferred to Beckley through Montgomery Ward.
So did he follow her back to Beckley and get married here, or did they get married?
They were married in New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now you...
in fact, I was born in New York City. And we moved here to Beckley when I was 2.
I delivered papers in Bowling Edition, and I remember delivering the news to your house. I think you were the second or third house on the left going down Glen Avenue.
That's right.
And
oh my gosh,
you of course, some of those years you were already in college, and when I would collect, your brother Steve would pay me sometimes, and sometimes your mother would. I never remember your dad ever paying me. We had to collect every Friday, but your mother always tipped well. I always look forward to her.
So you must have hit the porch then with the paper, huh?
And but it was funny about Bowling Edition, because if I remember correctly, Phil Vogel, Gene Morehouse, Hicks, Rod Odell.
Or Tom Hicks, yeah, Rod Odell, that's right.
And all of them lived in the Bowling.
Bud Kurtz. Lee Doherty,
that's amazing.
Tom Martin. Yeah, all of these radio people lived in the Bowling Edition, which is just off Johnstown Road, for those who don't know. Wow. That was a great place to grow up.
Now, your early life in Beckley, what were you interested in? I mean, in the elementary years and junior high years?
Oh, just being a regular kid. That was it. I wasn't, Wayne, what's interesting, I wasn't good enough to play sports. I didn't have the hand-eye coordination. But I always thought that athletes were special. And I just always enjoyed watching them. And of course, and eventually became editor of the Beckley Junior High newspaper, sports editor. Okay. And just enjoyed that end of it.
Now, you kind of described yourself as one time, it's something I read about being quiet and shy.
That's true.
And your brother was a little more outgoing
exactly.
As he was growing up. But in high school, you were active in the Junior Historians.
That's right, yeah.
And the chess club.
Yeah.
You still play chess?
You really did your homework, didn't you? No, I don't do that anymore. But I have my college degree in history, not in broadcasting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What kind of music did you listen to when you were in high school?
The first album I bought was Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Now your mother, she was an aspiring actress, but she actually was the first female personality on the radio in our area, maybe the whole state. But she worked for WWNR when she first started.
She started in 1960 at WWNR with Rod Odell. They both were hired the same time, 1960. And women at that time were rarely heard on the radio. I mean, that's just the way it was back then. So they gave her a talk show called The Woman's Angle. And what was weird, Wayne, eventually, when she retired, my brother Steve wound up with that show in that time period on that radio station many years later, called The Steve O'Brien Show. Obviously not The Woman's Angle, but yeah, wasn't that weird?
When she did The Women's Angle, it was a call-in show, wasn't it?
Well, mostly interview, but they would take calls occasionally. Yeah.
And I remember reading, she interviewed Eleanor Roosevelt when she came to Beckley. Eleanor was campaigning for John Kennedy. And the funny thing about it, what I heard that Miss Roosevelt, who had been all over the country and put in a lot of time, she actually was nodding out while your mother was interviewing.
Yeah, that's really. It was.
So your mother had to wake her up to answer questions. But
that was a pretty good get, as they call it. Yeah, to get the former First Lady.
But now your mother didn't she do Out Your Way first?
She did, yeah. She started, as I said, at WWNR and worked there for 5 years and then moved to WJLS in 1965 and started Out Your Way, the talk show. And they did more phone-ins there on that show. And she was there until 72. So she was at both stations. Really, there were only 2 radio stations in town at the time.
Now, she was really active in the Curtain Callers and several of those different productions. I remember seeing her in Driving Miss Daisy.
There you go.
And my gosh. And Pete Tirico was here a couple of years ago explaining how they got the car on the stage.
They used Pete's car, at the Woodrow Wilson Auditorium. Got that old Dodge on that stage. I don't know how they did it.
I know. I don't think there's ever been one on there besides that one.
Yeah, really.
Was,
you know, Wayne, what's interesting about my mother wanting to be an actress, and for those who don't know, the Curtain Callers was a little theater group here in Beckley, and their theater was across from WJLS on North Kanawha Street.
The old Playhouse.
Now it's the old Playhouse. Yeah. Now it's a parking lot. But that used to be the Palace Theater at one time growing up. That's where we would watch the Westerns on Saturday afternoon. But when she got the part of Driving Miss Daisy, she not only did her part, but she memorized the entire play. Everybody's part. I mean, I can't memorize a 30-second commercial, but she had that way. She could do it.
Who was the driver of the?
Mr. C.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. John C.
Okay.
And his daughter now, I think, still is manager of the auditorium there, Lorraine.
And I can remember after that, I went to the Rotary Club trying to bum some money for some fundraiser, and she was there also trying to get some money for something. And Clement Schulte, he was, as soon as she walks in, he goes, "Miss Daisy," and it was, the whole place just kind of lit up. But she was a great woman.
Well, thank you.
Now, Steve, your brother, he had the Steve O'Brien show that went on for several years.
Yeah, I think 13 years on WWNR.
He was really,
he enjoyed that show. I mean, he would do his homework. To do a good talk show, you've got to do your homework, and he did. He just loved doing it. And it was 90% call in, and he loved to argue with the callers. And especially, it was funny. He went to WVU, and in college, he was very much a liberal. I mean, very much. And then he got real when he got back into the real world and became a really conservative kind of person. So that was his deal on the air.
Now, Steve passed away in 2018, I think.
Yeah, right at this season, in fact, in December.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, at Marshall, you got into sports broadcasting first, I guess. How did that happen?
Well, Wayne, it's interesting. At Marshall, and I started in 1965 and didn't have a very good first year. Just didn't work out. I was in the wrong area at the wrong time, meaning I was going to be a political science major, and it didn't work. So in spite of the fact that my mother was in radio, I had no clue about radio. So in early September of '66, they had a sign on campus we need volunteers for the campus radio station, WMUL. And I figured, I think I can do that because it was one of 2 air-conditioned buildings on campus. If you've been to Huntington in the summer months, I mean, it is brutally hot and humid. And so here was a chance for me to study in an air-conditioned, soundproof studio, playing tapes and albums. And I can do that. So they gave me a 15-minute sports show twice a week, and then to watch some tapes and that sort of thing. So I said, I can do that. And I sort of caught the bug. And then it became every day. And then I started, I did color on Marshall football that first season. And then when basketball started, Marshall was a basketball school at that time. I mean, they had...
That's when Dan D'Antoni and Jim Davison...
That's right. George Stone and Bob Red. I mean, they had an incredible team led by Dandy Dan D'Antoni, as they called him there.
Now, Ellis Johnson was the coach,
He was the coach. You're
now,
exactly right.
They went to the Madison Square Garden, and you got to go broadcast.
Not once, but twice.
Wow.
And this was 1967. We went to Madison Square Garden, and that was the old Garden. It was old and dingy and just falling apart. So the next year, and by the way, that year, Marshall upset Villanova. They won the game at the foul line in the last moments. Their center was called Bob Allen, 6'8" guy. He couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a basketball. He steps to the line and makes 2 foul shots and wins the game. And I'm on the mic, and I went berserk. And they used that play-by-play. At that time, ESPN had not been invented yet. They took that play-by-play and put it on Armed Forces Radio, and it went around the world.
Wow.
So that was the first, So that was that year. The next year, 1968, they built the new Madison Square Garden, the current one. So it started in March of 68. By the way, Madison Square Garden is not square, it is round. Anyway, the only thing, Wayne, I know that nobody else can claim, I did the first radio broadcast in that building. Marshall played in the NIT against St. Peter's of New Jersey, and we were the first game in the NIT, and I was on the mic. And
that's awesome.
I'll tell you this real quick. I go into the building. Here's this brand new palace, and it had just opened days before. And I said to whoever it was, "Where's the broadcast room?" And they take me to a broom closet. Literally a broom closet. And on the wall, they had long sheets of paper. Here's your game, and here's where you're going to be, and there are your instructions. That was how they opened the building too soon, is what I'm saying. So they didn't have a radio booth for us. So they put us in front of the organ in the St. Peter's cheering section. That's where we did the play-by-play. Oh my gosh. But anyway, I did the first radio game. It was
Jim Davison, I remember him I'd go over to the Armory, and I think it was 64. He played for Logan.
For Logan, yeah.
And he come into town, and Beckley had Buddy Gravely, I think, Butch Smith, Rudy Coleman, and Davison could jump out of the gym, man. And he was, I think Logan won the state championship that year, if I'm not mistaken. But then he actually went to Concord one year and then transferred to Marshall. But what happened back then, freshmen still couldn't play in Division I, and
right.
He went to Concord, and that was NAI, and he played the whole year for, the way I understood, played for Concord and then transferred to Marshall, and is in the Hall of Fame and played 3 years there. They have some great teams, I tell you.
Well, in the NIT, he had a couple of 40-footers, and at that time there was no three-point shot, but he was so hot. Yeah. And I remember the New York newspapers, they said Marshall had players who could shoot from 40 feet, but their defense was a wave of the hand and a mean look. And I'll never forget that. And it was true. I mean, they didn't play much defense.
Now, Davison also was a state high jump champion, and I think a record he had lasted for about 30 years. But now, your wife, Lynn, was born in Black Eagle, Wyoming County.
That's
Where
right.
is Black Eagle? I don't know.
That is adjacent to Mullins. They still have a Dairy Queen there, and and they used to have a Sears store there.
She came to Beckley. Now, did you guys meet at Beckley, or
we did? Yeah. So her family moved from Wyoming County to here. I guess she was 2 years old, and so when we got married, we met doing ball games, and she was to the point at that time, Wayne. I was doing 2 basketball schedules. I was doing Beckley on one of our stations and Mullins on the other. So I was out 4 nights a week, maybe 5. And when we got married in 1973, she said, "I never see you anymore. And, we got to do something about this." Well, I said, "You know sports as well as I do. Why don't you do stats and color?" She said, "Okay." So we did. We were the first husband and wife team that I know of doing that in the state.
Wow.
And did that until our son came along.
Now, she liked sports.
Loved it. Had to.
But she had gone to Huntington. She was down there when you was at Marshall. She was
right.
at
St. Mary's.
School. Yeah.
St. Mary's School of Nursing. Yeah, but we didn't know each other then.
Now, in 72, you were one of the people that I think helped form the Marshall Alumni.
That's right.
Association in Beckley.
Yeah.
And I know Mel Hancock was involved and all that. When you started working for JLS, you started out as a sports announcer, and you had a show at 12 o'clock on Sundays, didn't you?
Well, yeah. When I started out, Wayne, it was I was the summer fill-in announcer. This was 1967. And Gene Morehouse was the general manager then, who, of course, was one of the all-time great play-by-play. He hired me. And then the next year is when he moved to Marshall. And so, of course, we knew each other over the years. And he asked me when I was at Marshall, he said, "I know you're about to graduate." This was 1969. He said, "Why don't you come work for me in the sports information office?" And I said, "I think I'd rather go back to mom's home cooking, and I've got an offer at WJLS." So had I taken the job with Gene Morehouse, I probably would have been on that plane that crashed and killed everybody on board. Yeah. I mean, things work in a strange way.
Yeah. Now you actually called the 1977 championship game of Woodrow Wilson and Fairmont.
Yeah.
That was the coldest.
Oh my gosh. The wind chill was 5 below zero, and there was no heat in that press box. It was played at Ripley.
I was there.
So and it was snowing, and it was just miserable. And we won the game 6-0. What a game.
People were actually going into the restrooms to get warm.
Yeah.
That's right. It was that bad. But you became the sports director, I guess. And back when I was growing up, on WWNR, I always listened to the Reds games at night when I was going to bed, and go to sleep a lot of time listening to the games. And then they quit having the Reds games for a while, and you brought them back.
That's right. Right.
It was.
I did, Wayne. I did the same as you. I was listening to Wade Hoyt doing the play-by-play on NR, and then when I was at JLS, we were able to bring them the network. And at that time, the Big Red Machine. I mean, it was an easy sell for Reds baseball. And Al Michaels, in fact, was the play-by-play voice for the Reds when we put them back on in the early 70s.
Yeah. Now, one of the first times I ever I knew you, but the first time I ever saw your name in a paper, you were hosting the Stover reunion at Spruce Knob.
Oh my gosh.
With Louis Matheny. And is that the Spruce Knob in Pendleton?
No, it's Spruce Mountain going over toward Whitesville. Okay. Yeah,
but you got some print for that.
Oh my gosh! Emerson Stover was sort of the head of the Klan, he was the county highway commissioner. He was the only Republican, I think, in the entire Democrat organization at that time Democrats had 80% or 90% of positions in the state.
He ran for several offices.
He did. He ran for
never
sheriff.
If he would be around now, he would probably be a governor.
Well, he had a great, he wouldn't mind me saying this, he's since passed away, but he had bumper stickers, and he also had a stutter. And on the bumper stickers, it was Stover for sheriff.
But another thing that you did at WJLS early, you hired Bob Cannon, and that was a good hire. I mean,
Bob was just, you talk about talent, he's since passed away, but I mean, the guy was an encyclopedia of knowledge, of sports knowledge, but he also did morning news for us for years. He would do the morning news and then go to his real job at the city. He was the chief zoning officer for many years at the city of Beckley. But we hired him. He was in sales, he was news, he was, you name it, he could do it. Bob was sort of a mentor. He was, he would listen to our broadcasts, and the next morning he'd say, Bill, you know, you've sort of fallen in love with this pet phrase. Why is everybody running up the gut? I said, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. Yeah. He said, listen to the tape. Well, I never listened to myself, but he was the one who would tell me, stop doing that. Okay.
It's also about that time I saw an article in the paper that you had one of your friends, Randy Johnson, had won an award, that's some kind of drawing, the front yard brawl, and you guys, he won some Marshall memorabilia, and he shared it with you, and you had another friend, Ricky Lewis.
Yeah.
You guys were, but I think it was the whole thing was kind of a West Virginia University fundraiser, but they were giving away some.
There were 5 of us at Marshall. We sort of had our own little deal going on. Randy, we still communicate with him. He lives in Roanoke. He's an Oak Hill guy. His father was the pastor of the First Baptist Church in Oak Hill for many, many years. Rick Lewis, he now lives in Kansas City, and we text every time there's a ball game, back and forth, normally Marshall. And we still keep in touch. When I go out to Kansas City, which is where my son lives, I'm out there 3 times a year, and we always have lunch together. So, we still keep in touch.
Let's talk about your son, Jay. What's he do for a living?
He's in real estate in Kansas City, and he has his degree as a graphic designer. And he originally, after marriage, they moved to Athens, Georgia. So he's a huge Georgia Bulldog fan, but moved to Kansas City because that's where Hallmark is headquartered, and he thought he could work for Hallmark. And he sort of did. Hallmark farms out a lot of what they do. And so the company that did some of their work was where Jay worked. But he realized he couldn't make a good living there. So he went into real estate. Things are booming in the Kansas City area. It's just really phenomenal what's happening. So he lives in a town size of Beckley that's adjacent to Kansas City. It's called Liberty. And that place is just, it's the right place to be if you're in real estate.
Now, he's blessed you with 5 grandkids.
5, yes, that's right.
And he and one of his children had a podcast.
That's right. I was on his podcast, I guess it was last year. They were here visiting.
Faking it or something.
That's right. Yeah. Wayne, you really have done your homework. Yeah. He's sort of an entrepreneur. He's 12 years old, and he's got a vending machine business.
Really?
Yeah, he had his dad buy him a vending machine, and they give all of the proceeds to charity. It's just cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Worked all those years at WJLS doing the broadcasting for Woodrow Wilson High School, and you ended up buying the place in 1996.
That's right. Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, the JLS stands for Joe L. Smith. That's what the call letters stand for. So Mr. Smith, you talk about an icon. He founded WJLS in 1939. There were no radio television stations in this area at that time. He had the foresight to put JLS on the air. And then he put on the first FM radio station on in the state, still going, WJLS FM. He did that in 1946. So I had the pleasure of working for him until he passed, and then his widow, Nancy Smith, took over. And what a wonderful lady. I mean, she was just, I would have worked for her forever. But she finally said, I'm going to retire in 1996, and I'll give you first chance at purchasing the stations. So Lynn and I did. It was an experience. It was, ownership of your own business is special, and especially for an icon. I mean, WJLS was renowned throughout the state. I became president of the state broadcasters in the 80s, served a 2-year term, and went around the state, traveled the state, doing the things that we needed to do as broadcasters. And in each town, everybody knew of WJLS. I mean, just an iconic brand.
During that time that you were there, you were still serving on boards like the YMCA, the Chamber of Commerce, the president of the West Virginia Broadcasting Association. You're in the Hall of Fame there. You're also in the Hall of Fame of Woodrow Wilson Sports Hall of Famer, and you were working as an adjunct professor at the College of West Virginia and New River Community. So you were a very busy guy.
Yeah. Let me just say, the Halls of Fame, both football and basketball at Woodrow, I'm very, very proud of those. But I'm in as a broadcaster, not as an athlete, because I'm so terrible as when it comes to athleticism.
When Sirius Radio came out, and then, of course, here in the last few years, podcasters and stuff, did that hurt the radio?
It did. Wayne, radio, we used an acronym called PICAN, P-I-C-A-N, which means it was for the public interest, convenience, and necessity. That's what local broadcasting is supposed to stand for. So, for example, I think the best thing that we ever did at JLS while I was there was a blizzard. We had 4 inches of snow. This was in the late 90s. We had planned for something bad to happen. We had generators already installed so we could stay on the air no matter what. Everybody else was kicked off the air. The newspapers couldn't get their story out. The television stations were off the air. We were on. I did an 11-hour shift by myself because I was the only one who could get to the station until somebody could relieve me. And it was so bad, we had to get the National Guard. We made the calls. In fact, Lynn was on the phone, taking phone calls. People, there were truckers that were stranded on the mountain coming between Hinton and Beckley on Sandstone Mountain. So we got the National Guard to come in to rescue them. And many other people who couldn't get their medicines, who couldn't do the basics. I mean, 6 people died during that time. There was a collapse of the Kroger store on Harper Road, and a person died there. A couple of people had heart attacks shoveling snow. I mean, it was a major disaster, and we were on the air. And we were we had 100% of the audience, and we did what we were supposed to do. It was great.
Yeah, I remember because we were checking in to see, what was going on, and it was JLS who
we were in.
In 2012, you decided to sell the place, and who actually took over JLS after you left?
A company, actually, they had an affiliate in Martinsburg, so I knew of them.
Okay.
They were based in Delaware and Maryland, a small regional company. And they were doing radio the way I thought it should be done. So it was comfortable for us to sell. They kept me on as general manager and then as a consultant for years. But eventually, it was time to retire for good. So I retired.
Quotations.
Yeah. And I will tell you, I was bored silly. So that's when this mayor thing came up. And I said, I can do that. I mean, it was.
Who thought of the mayors? I know Emmett Pugh left and they needed a mayor. Who actually thought of, that's Bill O'Brien?
Well, I went up and said, I know everybody on council. I think I can do this. And I went to each council member because they were the ones who had to vote. I had to get 4 votes to be mayor, and I got 4 votes. I got 4. I didn't get 5. I got 4. And so that was the start of the mayor thing. That was in 2014. So I was mayor 2014 to 2016.
Now you and made it pretty plain that at the end of the term 2016, you weren't going to run for re-election or anything like that. You weren't interested in the politics so much. But actually, you weren't a shaking hand type mayor or baby kisser. You had some work to do.
We did.
You inherited the hole, first of all, in downtown Beckley.
It was, yeah. Two things, Wayne. First off, the reason that I didn't run again in 2016, Lynn said, and I've talked to her about it, they said, people came to me, you're going to run again. And I really enjoyed the job, and I thought we did a pretty good job. And they wanted me to run, and I talked it over with Lynn. And Lynn says, well, of course you can run again. But if you do, you'll do it as a bachelor. So I said, I got you. The problem with that was, we took calls at home. We were interrupted. We'd go out to eat, and people would come up, hey, I've got a problem, or I've got this, or I've got that. And I will tell you this, Wayne, here it is 8 years later, I still get people to come up and say, I've got a barking dog problem, or I've got a pothole problem. Call City Hall. I'm not there anymore. It's just stop. But anyway, the first day as mayor, Bird White was the recorder treasurer. And I go into the office, and he says, welcome aboard. Here's your desk, and the restrooms around the corner. And by the way, we're $1.5 million in the hole. Have a nice day. Oh, crock, So that was the very first thing that we had to overcome. And it took a little while.
You did.
We did it. It was, and I will tell you, it wasn't an easy thing to do because government, not only in the city, but everywhere. You now know that the state is going to, the new governor, his plan is to reduce government, to get rid of waste. The new president says we're going to have Elon Musk and others to reduce waste in government. Well, the same was happening in the city. So we had to reduce personnel, we had to reduce government, and it wasn't easy. People were used to the way they were operating. We reduced things by roughly 5% and didn't miss a beat. It's just, and the reason we were able to do it was I didn't have to worry about an election. I said, I'm only running this term. And so if people don't like it, too bad. I don't have to worry about another election.
Also, during your time, you hired Leslie Baker.
Yeah.
And that was
saw her yesterday, as a matter of fact.
That was a great hire.
She's just, what a wonderful lady. And in fact, she was working an event for Historic Black Night. And she said, I said, do you ever get a day off? She said, not really. She says, I'm doing an Historic Black Night, and we're doing, of course, Parks and Recreation. And just a wonderful person. And that's part of the people at the city of Beckley. Great people doing great things. We're blessed.
Now, it wasn't always easy. You actually got hit by a car while you were the mayor.
Yeah.
It wasn't intentional, but...
Well, I don't think so, but I told the lady who hit me, I said, if you wanted me to fix your street, just make the call. You didn't have to hit me. It turned out the lady who hit me, her mother lived next door.
Really?
So when she hit me, she says, Mom, she gets on her phone, and Mom, I've just hit the mayor. And her mom says, well, is the car damaged? No, I hit the mayor. Lynn and I were walking. We had gone to a Miners baseball game after a city council meeting, and it rained. So, it rained hard. So we decided that was enough. And we're walking through the parking lot, and here comes the car, and the lights were in her eyes, and the rain had blinded. It was glaring. She didn't see us, and she hit me really hard. I pushed Lynn out of the way, but my leg was... You remember when Joe Namath was hit on the football field, and the bones were sticking out of his leg? Yeah. That was me.
Really?
That was me. My leg was broken in 2 places, and it was severe. And it was, and that night was the only night they didn't have an ambulance there. So everybody's gathered. I never lost consciousness, but they're saying, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I can get right up. Well, no. There were bones sticking out. It was bad.
Of course, you weren't calling as many baseball or basketball and football games or none of those. But I guess you'd get called out every once in a while. But did you miss those trips after you finally quit?
Wayne, no. I didn't miss the trips, but I missed the games and the coaches and the players. So what happened after I retired from play-by-play on radio, Bob Boland called. He was doing Marshall color on the internet and was working for a company called Video Productions here locally, doing color and sort of coordinating broadcasting here, mostly doing Beckley and Shady Spring. And he called me and said, would you like to work with me? We need a play-by-play guy. And I said, I'm done. So he didn't quit. He kept on for a year. And finally I said, I think I'm ready. I'm really missing this. And he said, the best part about it is we're only doing local games. You won't have to travel. We have an engineer who sets up the equipment. You won't have to do that. All you have to do is show up and do the games. Well, it's not that easy. I mean, to do a game, you got to do your homework just like you've done. I mean, you've got to find out, what the visitors team is like. And, you've got to learn pronunciations and you just got to do your homework. A lot of people don't realize that for every hour you're on the air, you should do an hour's worth of homework. And that's what the biggies do, the guys on the national scene.
Is it a lot different doing a video than it is radio?
Very much, very much. And that's been my problem. Bob would get on me. He said, you're doing a radio play-by-play again. They can see it. And, so he was right. And so I've learned, he said, remember, you're Jim Nance. Just let the picture do the talking. And so I think I've gotten better at it. Bob was a terrific analyst. And as most everybody knows now, he is the head men's basketball coach at Glenville State. But Bob could have been, if he wanted to have been, an analyst on a national broadcast. He was that good.
He grew up in the game. I mean, he saw every level, and plus, I mean, he's personable enough. Bob's good at everything he's done.
That's right. That's right.
Now, the city of Beckley and the area, to show their appreciation, the press box at Woodrow Wilson High School was named after you and Fred Persinger and Gene Morehouse.
That's right. That's right.
That was just a few years ago, wasn't it?
That's right. I told him that my name on there, my name is on the restroom. But we joke because there is no restroom up there. But if you work, I was the voice of the Flying Eagles for 43 years. Wow. Nobody's ever done it as long. That's right. And it was an honor. It was a great honor. It just and still is. So I got to work there. Earlier this year, I did a Beckley game on Video Productions, and this is my 50th season in doing play-by-play. So it's
I just heard you the other day with Independence State playoff game against James Monroe. I think
that's
it was.
That's right. On a Sunday.
You did it by yourself.
I did. Yeah. Normally, my Maris Lowry, of course, is now the producer of this region. Video Productions does games in Huntington, Charleston, Logan, and Beckley. So Maris sort of handles, and he was my radio compadre for over 20 years at WJLS. So he's doing that now. He does a lot of the games. And so, in fact, he and I are going to do a women's college game later today. And then high school games starting this weekend at the Shady Shootout, the preseason. So
while you're doing all this stuff, you're as a mayor and an announcer, anytime somebody called to host or MC a charitable event or whatever, you went out. And I mean, I've seen you at the Little League fundraiser, the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, just the Tex Williams Sports Legends.
Yeah.
I mean, just everywhere. But the city of Beckley in 2022 through the YMCA honored you and your wife Lynn with the Spirit Award, the Spirit of Beckley Award, and I'm sure that meant a lot to you.
That was, Wayne, the ultimate. I mean, I love this city, love this area, worked at so many projects over the years. And then, of course, as mayor and then as broadcaster before that. And to be honored in that way, it was just unbelievably wonderful. I just, still can't get over that they chose us. I guess they were running out of people. I don't think so.
It was a great turnout and also an excellent fundraiser. Unfortunately, Lynn passed away in 2023.
She passed away last year. We had been married just shy of 50 years. And so, that's another reason that I'm working video productions. I get out of the house. I do things that I enjoy. And she would want me to do that.
Have you ever thought about moving closer to your grandkids?
Oh, they put the word on me every time I'm out there. We've got a place for you. We've got it, I'm a Beckley guy.
Yeah.
So I'll be out there at Christmas. But Kansas City is just a whole different world. Beckley is wonderful.
Now, you also, just this past year, you were the co-chairman of the Spirit Award.
Yeah.
And Richard Gerald and his wife, I think.
The Chicken Man
and
his first lady. Yeah, what a great event. Record-breaking money raised, over $150,000.
Now, I know that your wife, Lynn, loved Elvis. and she did get to scratch that off her bucket list to go to Graceland. What's on your bucket list? What's something you haven't done that you would like to do?
I'm not sure I've got anything on that, Wayne. I'm just a pretty dull guy. I mean, I've done pretty much everything I wanted to. We went to a World Series game. I mean, I broadcast games at Madison Square Garden. I mean, got a wonderful family. There's really not much else that I need to accomplish. It's just, I'm just here.
What do you see in the near future? Anything different than what you've been doing?
Well, for me, this may be my last year in broadcasting. I figured 50 years, that was my goal. I wanted to do 50 years. Now, Al Michaels is still going strong, and he's 80. I'm 77. But I figured 50 was enough. So I'm not sure if I'll continue or if they'll invite me back to do that. But and I've sort of reduced, the number of things that I'm associated with. But I still do work with Tex Williams. Talked to him again this morning, the legendary coach.
Oh, he's something else.
Isn't he a blast? I mean, for example, he asked me a couple of months ago to MC the event for Lonnie Warwick in Mount Hope. They named the football stadium after him. And we did that. Of course, Lonnie then just a few weeks later passed away. But it was a wonderful event, and it just was, things like that. I think anybody, Wayne, could MC or do that sort of event thing. But I was taught by Gene Morehouse that people don't come to see the MC. They come to see the honoree. So introduce them, get their name right, and get off. And that's what I try to do.
Now, I know in earlier podcasts that Maris Lowry had spoken about working with you and what an honor and how much you had taught him as a pro. Tim Berry had even said you taught him how to do a radio voice.
Tim, as you know, Tim is so outgoing. That was easy to do. Yeah, the one I will say, Jay Rist, who is the head of the YMCA, as you know, he did his first interview with me on radio. And we had a half an hour to fill. And I asked him the questions. In 5 minutes, he was done. I mean, he was scared to death. So we had 25 minutes to fill. And it's one of those times, Wayne, where you said, well, now what is your favorite color? What is on your bucket list? What do you want to, we had to fill. And now if you talk to Jay Rist, you can't get him to stop. I mean, he's just so great.
I think one of the amazing things, I saw this on the internet. In the 1962 Woodrow Wilson basketball team that went undefeated and won the state championship, Bain Surratt and Dave Barksdale and those guys, I saw the film, and you were doing the broadcast.
I did it was a recreation.
Yeah,
yes.
Recreation. I knew you.
I'm old, but not that old.
And you told me that was the first time you saw that film.
I did that on the first take. And it was grainy, black and white, and there were gaps in it. So, I had to sort of think on the fly There'd be 2 minutes left in the quarter, and then all of a sudden there'd be a minute left, and there was no fill-in. The hardest part, because Beckley played, and they were undefeated, their only undefeated season in basketball, they played Weirton. And I couldn't find anybody to give me information on the Weirton team that I had to recreate. I finally found the public address announcer who had done that year. And he gave me all the details. Fritz Williams, who went on to play in the NBA, was the star on that Weirton team. So then we were able to recreate it. So I did it on the first take. We stopped the tape at the end of the game so I could do the wrap-up show. I had to add up all of the numbers. But yeah,
that's amazing.
That worked out. That worked out really well. It just, I was proud of it.
Sadly, most of those players from Beckley are gone. I think Dave Barksdale's the only starter.
I guess because, Billy Carbona just passed recently, and wow.
In your yearbook in high school,
I deny everything.
You had, it was described you as good-natured and always dependable. And I have to agree. Do you ever tell people no if someone calls you?
It's funny when you would ask that, because that's what my friends have said. Why don't you tell people no? And I really haven't learned much. I've done it a couple of times here lately, but it's if it's a good cause and nobody else will do it, I'll do it. But it's hard to say no. I mean, most everybody here is just so terrific, and you just want to be a part of it in some way.
Well, Bill, I sure thank you for coming and talking to us. Is there anything else you would like to mention while we're on the air?
Well, Wayne, I would just say that, and I've seen a couple of your podcasts. You do a great job. Not only do you do your homework, but you let people, I was the interviewer on Out Your Way. I did it for 30 years after my mother left. I took over the show. So I've interviewed thousands of people over the years. I've done, 2,000 plus ball games. I've done, coaches interviews, and I've done all kinds of things. So for you to let people talk and to lead them along in a conversation, that's a talent that you have. And it's a good thing here for the community. We have so many people who are outstanding, and they would just rather be behind the scenes. And you're doing a great service to get people to come out on front of the stage. This is a great place to live and work. It really is.
I appreciate that. And coming from you, it means a whole lot to me. But I would like to get you back, and I'd like to talk about the history of the radio a little more and get into specifics. And we mentioned some guys like the Ray Halls and the Rodriguez or the Gonzalez and guys like that. And I know you know a lot about that stuff.
Well, I did. They were competitors, but we were friendly competitors. And for example, Rod Odell, we mentioned at the beginning of our chat, he was the competitor. He was eventually program director and then general manager at WWNR. But he eventually, at the end of his career, came to work for me. He was my sales manager. I brought him back from Florida. And he was sort of my mentor growing up. I mean, here's a guy who did it all.
Waddle.
The fat daddy Waddle. I mean, from the deck of dusty discs from the distant past. He was just wonderful to work with and helped me along as a competitor. He would say, I locked my keys in the car one time in Welch. And he's at the same restaurant. We're going to do the same game, but on different stations. He was able to get my car unlocked. He could have left me there, and I wouldn't have gotten on the air. I mean, that was the friendship that we had as broadcasters.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you, and you're welcome back. I'd love to have you come back.
Well, now that I know where you are, I'll be happy to do that. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Anybody else out there that'd like to be on our podcast, you can contact me at awbennett50@gmail.com, and we'll get you on there. And remember, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet, and God bless you.